we've talked about this morning, I've been going through in the last few days, like really in my face. And I know at some stage I did long to see more. Question being, and sometimes I listen in my heart and I go, oh, that might have a bit of truth in it, but you sometimes get around my father, I'll be specific, very negative, very opinionated. I do find I have the emotion of anger and I go, okay, and he's very, very judgmental, always has been. And what I find is that when you're trying to look at your addictions, when do you actually learn the difference between the people that are really truly telling you with loving their heart and the people that are just plain dealing with their own judgments and beliefs?
Well, firstly, everyone is just really dealing with their own judgments and beliefs. But let's look at what you just said as you said what you said. You said you're talking about your father, and he is. Can we go back to that?
Oh, he's very judgmental and opinionated. And he's very negative in a lot of ways.
Can you see why you say he is? You're not actually looking at what I am. Can you see that for a start? Okay. So all of those things. Now, how many of you would feel upset about a person like that? Frankly, no? Most of us, right? Okay. So my response, so this is my response. What's my response? What would you feel if you had a father like that? What's the first thing most of us would probably feel? Anger, yeah. Most of us feel angry. How dare he be judgmental towards me? How dare, he's always opinionated. He doesn't ever listen to my opinion, And negative, I try to do something positive in my life, and what does he say about it? He just craps on it, So, yeah, I'm upset about that. Now, remember what we said earlier. Every time we feel anger, we are living in an addiction. And our addiction is not getting met. So my angry, judgmental, opinionated, negative father, for some reason, isn't meeting my addictions. Right? What would be the addiction I would have, do you feel? What might be the addiction that I have? What do I want to feel from him instead of those feelings is what I need to look at. So let's look at the opposite. We want to feel from him, instead of angry, what do we want to feel? Peaceful with him, right, let's say. Peace. Instead of judgmental, what do we want to feel? Acceptance. Even if we're wrong, we'd like to have acceptance. Right. Okay, opinionated. Instead of feeling an opinionated man, what would we rather feel? So he listens to me, right? So he listens to my opinions. My opinions. Instead of negative, what would you like him to be? Positive. There's my addictions. You laugh. You say, hang a sec, AJ, are you saying that me wanting peace in my life is an addiction? And I'm saying, yeah, that's actually true. And you're saying, hang a sec, you're saying that me wanting acceptance is an addiction? And I'm saying, yeah, actually that's true too. And what about someone listening to me? Everybody wants someone listening to. Yeah, everyone's in an addiction with it. And everyone wants you to be positive all the time. Right? Yeah, that's an addiction too. So all of these addictions cover over something. Because I know that I'm wrong because my initial response was anger. And if my initial response is anger loving? No. So what would happen if I was in a loving space and this angry, judgmental, opinionated, negative man comes up to me? If I was in a loving space with him, what would happen? I'd give him a hug and say, I love your angry, judgmental, opinionated self, right? But, I don't know if I want to spend much time with you, but that's the way it goes. But you wouldn't feel this terrible feelings about it, would you, inside of yourself, do you think? You'd feel, if you're at one with God, do you feel would you feel like going, you're a terrible man, you're stupid, would you start projecting back at him? You wouldn't, would you? So the fact that I am means he is doing these things, and in my law of attraction, and of course if he's my father, he's created a lot of my law of attraction anyway, he's in this to expose my addictions regarding these areas. So what about my addiction to peace? When things are peaceful, what do I feel? Safe, secure. So can you see I'm starting to identify that must have some fears about an angry person, making me feel unsafe. Why would an angry person make me feel unsafe? If I was at one with God, would I ever feel unsafe? Of course I wouldn't. Because when you're at one with God, it's like God's on your side. Who else do you need on your side, really? If the creator of the universe is on your side, does it matter if nobody else is? Of course not, right? So the fact that it does means that I have some fear to process about a lack of peace. So that's probably related to something in my childhood about Dad being angry and I was afraid, and he brought home with him angry spirits perhaps, and as well, and not only was he angry, but there's all these spirits that are angry as well, all projecting at me, and I'm feeling frightened, little child, and I want him now to stop doing that. I want him to stop being angry and start being peaceful, so I don't have to feel this afraid little child that's in me. And that's what so I project at him. Don't you be angry with me. Don't you be angry with me. You get angry with me, I'm going to get angry with you for not being safe, for me not feeling safe anymore. Can you see that? So it's so really what's happening is every time you list something about the other person, you're really wise if you can also make a list about what the addictions are. Why have you noticed all of these things in this other person? It's not so much you noticing them, it's that you're angry about them, which tells you that you must have an addiction. It's one thing to notice them. Yes, I agree. When I feel through you to your dad, yes, I agree, he's all those things. Mind you, he isn't all those things. He has those injuries, is more like what I would put it. He has all those injuries, I agree. Right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, AJ, I think, because there's times where he can carry on and I can just sit there really peaceful. And I hadn't necessarily looked at, there's times it's a very physical thing in me, because it's the physical starting, and then I tune in and go, what's the matter? And I can feel so much anger. And I think when it's like the Desiderata, people that are vexation to the spirit, they say move. And I've had times where people have been really violently in a rage, and I have just been so calm and something comes over me. But
can I suggest to you that you often in violently angry situations go out of body? In other words, you detune from the situation, right? Many of us do this automatically. So my suggestion is, in a next violently angry situation that you have, which I'm sure you must be still attracting, allow yourself to stay in your body and see how you feel bodily.
Well, that I did once, and it was all completely like a little electrodes going off in my body all the time, and I kept thinking, what do I do?
What you do is breathe and feel it. Breathe and feel it. Breathe and feel it. Diaphragmatically breathe and just keep feeling it.
Okay.
Right?
And the second question following on to that is, when you are sensitive or mediumistic, and I go in mostly with the men, and you go in and you're friendly and you're happy, and like you're saying, you can feel that after a while, you can feel that sexual fondling going on, and it's like, hang on, this is really not where I'm coming from, and I just don't know what to do with that. I usually withdraw or disappear, and I haven't physically dealt with it because I can feel it, and that's not what I want.
So what we need to do is find out what's underneath that. So we'll go through this process because we haven't got as much time now because we've started a bit late. We'll go through the process of all the different things that we can do to get to the point of where we're actually feeling our causal emotion. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much.
But can everybody see how when you make a list of other people's stuff, you are also making at the same time a list of your own addictions, really? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. So, the woman doesn't listen to me. So what's my addiction? I want the woman to listen to me. What's underneath that? I probably wasn't listened to as a child from my mother. Do you see how there's a whole link of things there? You know, the woman doesn't find me sexually attractive. I'm not sexually attractive. Why is that? There's got to be something about my dad or my mum in amongst all of that. Like my mum might have suppressed sexuality, which meant that I had to suppress mine, or my dad might have been overtly sexual and I was ashamed of him, and so I've tuned out of my own sexuality as a result. But with every single list we make about the other person that annoys us and makes us upset and angry, it is covering the actual list inside of ourselves of our addiction. So, what's the next thing we need to do? So the first thing you notice is an attitude, isn't it? It's a desire that needs to grow. The desire of wanting to know about it. And the desire of, no matter how shameful it makes me feel, no matter how disgusting it makes me feel, no matter how afraid of it I am, I want to know. We need to develop this desire within us to know. All right? So what do we do next? After we've developed a desire in us to know, what I would suggest to do as a tool is to make a list of everything that makes you, and I'll put makes in quotation marks there, you angry. Angry. Now, definition of anger: slight annoyance, mild frustration, annoyance, right? Feeling that you're being controlled, manipulated, all those things are all part of the anger-based emotion. So anything that gives you a mild annoyance, anything that gives you mild frustration, all of those things, write them all down, because underneath every one of them is an expectation. So that's the next thing. Define your expectations. Remember that all expectations, now remember this, all expectations. The expectation you have to be loved, that's an unloving expectation too. The expectation you have that somebody doesn't treat you badly, that's an expectation that's unloving in you too. Does that make sense? All expectations, all, are unloving. What kind of expectations does God have of you? Zero. Yep. And when you're at one with God, you will have zero. Imagine living with a person with no expectations. That'd be pretty amazing. You don't have to do anything for them, anything to them to be loved. It's pretty amazing that, isn't it? Well, the truth is you're living with one every day and you're rejecting him. God's that person. Yeah. So we don't want that. We don't want that a lot of the times. We reject that a lot of the times. We think we want it, but we keep pushing it away. So define all of your expectations. Your anger tells you your expectations. Your annoyances, frustrations, and all those, they all tell you your expectations. So you define your expectations. You see, the reason why is that you're not going to look at any of them emotionally until you admit to yourself you've got them, are you? Well, you're just going to skip over them completely all the time. We define them and we write them down. We know what makes us angry, so therefore we know what our expectations are. I expect a man loves me. I expect the woman to put dinner on the table at 6:30. Our expectations can be physical or emotional or spiritual for that matter, can't they? And all of them are going to be unloving, but we need to define them. We need to see what they are, remembering they're all unloving. Now, this isn't a judgment of me. This is just the truth. All expectations are unloving because God doesn't have expectations of me. God doesn't expect anything of me, so therefore, any time I expect something of another person, I am being unloving. It's just quite that simple. And it's not a judgment, it's just a statement of truth. So instead of judging myself about how unloving I've been, So we start writing our expectation list. Oh yeah, I expect that, I expect that, I expect that. Oh yeah, I expect that too, I expect that. And over the page, I expect that, over the page. And after you get to 6 or 7 or 8 pages of them, you start going, gee, what kind of person am I? Remember I said you might have 1,000 addictions? Or 2? Every one of those addictions cover over an expectation. They're driven by an expectation. So I'm starting to get to the 8th page, and if there's 25 a page, that's 200, and I'm starting to feel like, there's no one wants to know any more about me. That's a judgment. I'm now in judgment of myself. Because the truth is, all of my expectations usually were created in my childhood by my environment, right? So by me getting all down upon myself about what I've now got inside of myself, I'm really judging myself, and that's not helpful either. I just need to be truthful about what's there. Do you follow? Just allow yourself to be truthful. So I've now defined my expectations, and I've now realised they're all unloving, even though most of them feel like they're not unloving. We go like that, well, how can that be unloving? You're telling me that, no, that doesn't sound right to me. I know it's unloving, but I should still be able to have it, and we have all of this blame thing going on. So when we start talking to people about their emotions, oftentimes they're saying, but the other person yelled at me. They yelled at me. I say, yeah, I know, and you're unloving right now. But they yelled at me. Why aren't you saying they're unloving? I just said, well, they are unloving, but you're unloving right now too. Do you know what I mean? And we're happy to see, we want the person to point out the other person's stuff, but we're not very happy to look at our own stuff, right? So the beauty of doing this is we're starting to have an openness and a humility to look at our own stuff. And that's a very powerful tool with your connection with God. You see, the primary thing that prevents you from receiving divine love is the fact that we're unwilling to look at our own stuff. So wouldn't it pay to look at our own stuff as a high priority? Of course. So that's why, these kind of things, these kind of tools are helpful. Well, so we've prayed about wanting to know all of our addictions. We've written down, as part of the exercise, everything that makes us angry. We realise everything that makes us angry is linked to an expectation. So let's start writing down all of our expectations. So we write all of them down. We're now sitting there thinking, shit, I'm a shock person. I'm terrible. I'm bad. Well, now we're out of harmony with our love of self as well. And that's another addiction. Why do you want to punish yourself? Probably because you were punished in your childhood and you just want to keep it going. And that's an addiction too. What we need to do is stop punishing ourselves and start getting real with ourselves. We punish ourselves so we can avoid punishment from others. Or feeling bad, of course. Yep. But the main reason why we punish ourselves is because we're avoiding punishment from others. The addiction in the childhood is, if I as a child recognise what's wrong with me before mum and dad do, then when mum and dad want to hit me, I'll have already gone through it emotionally and worked it all out, and they won't feel like hitting me anymore. Right? So we have a lot of addictions based around that. But let's keep going. So we do that, we do that, we do that. We are yet really to process emotion, except for perhaps the emotion of I'm bad. We're probably in that by this stage, right? So what do we do next? What do? We need to get somehow from the expectation into the emotional reason why we have the expectation. What fear, make a list if you want, what fear causes the expectation? Now, for many of us, by the way, when you get to the stage of defining your expectations, many of you will automatically get into emotions many times. Because just the process of actually describing the expectations to yourself opens you up emotionally, and you start actually connecting to why you have those expectations. And that often straight away triggers you emotionally. But if it doesn't, if we make a list about the fears related to the expectations. So I have an expectation that a woman makes my dinner at 6 p.m. every night. So what's the fear under that expectation? The woman's demonstrating to me, through making my meal, that she loves me. Right? That's what I feel, obviously. But initially, I might not even get that deep. I might just say, the meal should be on my table at 6 o'clock. That's when I get home from work, right? Or that's when I want to eat. So my expectation is that I want to eat at 6 o'clock. Why do I want to eat at 6 o'clock? There's got to be some reason why I want to eat at 6 o'clock. Could be simple like mummy fed me at 6. It could be that. And why is it from a woman that I need to be fed? Why can't a man make the meal? She's got breasts. Ladies, there's very little emotions related to the fact that you've got breasts. Trust me. You don't believe that? Remember, every emotional addiction enters us when we're not in a state generally to even be intellectually cognizant of what's occurring. So does the child know mummy's got a breast when the child is like just born? No, it doesn't know. All it's doing is feeling the nurturing from mummy, isn't it? So when you go to me, it's because of women's breasts or something, I wasn't nurtured when I was little. That's just an intellectual argument you're using. The truth is, at the time that you were being suckled by your mother, you did not have even the intellectual awareness of what was occurring. So then how can you know that it's about that now? The truth is you will just feel an emotion. And if you're not feeling an emotion and you think, oh, this is all about me not being suckled by my mum with her breast, it's all about a spirit telling you what they think the emotion is. And it's certainly not the actual emotion. The actual emotion will be, I wasn't nurtured. And that's got nothing to do with breasts. Do you see what I'm saying? You can be nurtured from a male just as much as you can be nurtured by a female, and it's got nothing to do with the woman's breasts. Sorry, I'm just trying to confront a lot of your new age belief systems, right? Anyway, let's get back to this one. What fear causes the expectation? So underneath the fear of like coming home, not a meal on the table. I've been working all day and my woman, can you feel that anger coming out of me now? My woman has not made my meal. Right? She doesn't even care enough about the fact that I have been working all day for her. Now that's the underlying, so that anger obviously covers a fear. So what's the fear that causes that? Well, the fear is that she doesn't love me. My woman actually doesn't love me. Isn't that the fear? And you feel she's just demonstrated it. She's demonstrated it by not having the meal ready at the time that you feel it should be ready. So what emotion am I avoiding? I'm avoiding feeling unloved by my wife. I feel unloved by my wife. And instead of saying, actually, darling, I feel unloved by you in that moment, what we normally do instead is we get upset and angry because we don't even want to feel the feeling of being unloved in that real situation right there and then. Does that make sense? But if we could learn to voice it, actually, I feel unloved right now. And she says, yeah, go with that. Let's see where that takes you. Because the truth is, she's made 365 meals for you this year already. like if you're not feeling loved after that, something's wrong, right? So you let yourself feel, she says, yeah, go with that. So you're feeling unloved. And eventually, if you just allow yourself to actually just feel the feeling in that present moment. So you don't have to go seeking for any childhood stuff here. All we're feeling at this moment is my wife, someone who says she loves and cares for me, doesn't love or care for me. That's what I feel right now. That's what I'm feeling right now. And she, if she was in a good place, would actually allow me to go down this track emotionally. Actually, I'm feeling like you don't love me right now. You know, I've been working all day, you know, I feel quite exhausted. And after working all day, I don't really feel like coming home and making my own meal. You haven't been working all day, some half of the day you're out with your, you know, let's say we're not got children. Half the day you're out with your girlfriends, and the other half of the day you went swimming and you know, and you did some of your art in the room there, and because you were so involved in that, I've been working all day for us, you know, and I'm not. So what I'm doing now, can you see what I'm doing? Instead of going into the rage and anger about the situation, I'm trying now to just connect with, by describing how I'm feeling, I'm trying to connect with the sadness that's inside of me about the issue. Does that make sense? And I'm feeling quite unloved right now. And then all of a sudden, what will start happening when you get used to doing this, all the time, the emotion itself of sadness will just rise in you, and you just start allowing yourself to cry. So you just start crying, and actually, I'm feeling so unloved by you now, and you know, and if you just allow yourself to keep talking and allow yourself to keep feeling the emotion, eventually what will come up is the actual emotion that you feel she doesn't love you in that moment. Now, the beauty of doing that is that underneath that will often be the truth, something to do with your childhood, but you don't actually have to know what it is at this point. All you need to do is go into owning the actual emotion there and then. Does that make sense? So here I am, I've already done this preliminary work. I want to know all of my addictions. I list everything that makes me angry. I define my expectations, and then I look at my fears. So I've done all that intellectually. So I'm at least a little bit open to the whole process now of examining my emotions and examining my addictions. But what I'm saying the next step really is, in the situation, be completely truthful about how you feel. Now, I just want to define completely truthful. Anger is never truthful. Because anger isn't about how you feel, it's about what you're projecting at another person. You're not owning it. When I say anger, like, you can be angry and feel it truthfully inside of yourself, but if you do, it'll be a very childlike type anger. The truth is, for the majority of us, anger is not a truthful condition. We're not being honest with ourselves when we're in anger. We're being in our addiction. Remember, everything that makes us angry is proof of the addiction. And the addiction is not a truthful place in feeling a causal emotion. Right? So if I'm in the situation, I need to learn to be completely truthful about how I feel. So in the example I gave, I'm really angry with you because you have not cooked my dinner, and I'm sick to death of coming home, not having a dinner in front of me, and off I go. Now, is that being truthful? No. Now, at the time, I'm going to think it is. That's my problem. Because at the time, I am in my addiction, right? And I need to get out of my addictions and get into emotions, which are the opposite to the addiction. So in a situation, I need to be completely truthful. I just flump on this, flump down on the lounge, So sit down, and you just imagine yourself in a situation where someone's just been unloving to yourself for a moment. And you do this now, where someone's been unloving to you, like where you didn't get what you wanted from them. That's what you feel. So you breathe, right? Close your eyes for a moment maybe, and you breathe. Start voicing out loud how you're feeling, right? I'm feeling really upset, actually. So you start describing how you're feeling. If your partner, I'm running out of battery, so I'll just put 2 more in. I've got 2 here. Are we back on? Yes, we are. Now, if your partner is used to dealing with emotions, your partner will be very used to you doing this, and you be used to her doing it too. If you're not used to dealing with emotions, then just inform your partner beforehand. This is the kind of thing you're going to do instead of yelling and screaming at them. I'm sure they'll be impressed. Right? So what you do instead is you allow yourself to breathe and feel and start describing to yourself, but out loud. See, there's a power in doing it out loud too. There's this real power in doing it out loud, because when you're doing it in your head, you're not always connecting to the emotion of it. When you're doing it out loud, you're starting to really let yourself feel the emotion up. So you're closing your eyes so you're not distracted by everything going on around you, and you're starting to feel your emotions. And they can be there or not, but it'd be lovely for them to be there, because there will be something in this for them as well, generally, because everyone's law of attraction generally finishes up triggering another person, and if both people are open enough, you can deal with a lot of things emotionally. So when myself and Mary are going through things, the other person generally is just sitting there listening to what we're going through, right? And allowing us, not projecting at us to do it or anything like that, but just allowing us to voice what's going on. So actually I feel really upset and angry, actually. So you allow yourself to shake and feel the anger that you feel. Right? So I feel really angry and frustrated, actually. And so about coming home to no dinner, right? So you feel really angry. And then you'll start very rapidly generally feeling that anger and connecting what it's about. It's about the fact that there's no dinner on the table. And how does that feel? You know, what does that feel? You can ask yourself that question. What does that feel like? Well, I've been working all day, and you know, you haven't been working all day, and you know, I'm working for us, and we have to pay the bills and everything else. I feel so. In the end, you know what you might get to? That you actually don't like your job. You might even get to that. It might be something completely unrelated to what you thought it was going to be related to. And that you're just sick and tired of working in this job, and you're so distressed about it that you haven't got a job you love, that by the time you come home you're just physically exhausted with the distress of not having a job you love. It might be just that simple, that the emotion that comes up. But if you allow yourself to connect to it and allow yourself to breathe and allow yourself to feel it in the situation, you'll get to a point where you start feeling the emotion, if you do that all the time. But it's about being truthful. This is not about being, you know, in an angry space yelling at somebody. It's about being truthful with what's going on inside of yourself. And Mary wants to say something. Could someone give her a mic? Thanks.
I was just giving you a little indicator at some time when you're done. Are you...
Go away.
For me, because I've had many addictions that were not based on causal emotion, causal grief, so I really had to... Oh, sorry, I'll come up here.
Thanks, darling. We want to address the audience. Mary's learning to address the audience rather than me in an interaction.
For myself, I had to really desire to see the truth of what was occurring also. I see many people with addictions trying to, so in this example, process that their mother didn't love them, when the truth may be that their father just had an arrogant viewpoint to women. And that is actually the false belief that needs to be released. So very often with addictions, there is a causal pain, but sometimes there's not a causal pain. There's just a false belief that was created within us, which is an error, which if you think about it, all of our causal pain is just an error that we are releasing. It's an erroneous emotion that we believe to be the truth. So sometimes, and I'm bringing this up because I know for AJ has had more addictions has had very few addictions, but addictions based on causal grief. But I have actually had more addictions, well, in both camps. Some of them were based around feeling that if a man loves me, he will do certain things for me. That came from an error in my relationship with my dad that wasn't related to him not doing things for me, it was related to him doing lots of things for me. So does everyone understand that distinction that I'm making there? So I had to really pray about seeing the truth of what was happening in these interactions.
Yeah. So can everyone see that what Mary's bringing up is important in that many of our addictions were created in us because we became spoilt children, where we had our mother or our father do all sorts of things for us, and eventually we learned how to manipulate them into doing it and how to control them to do it and all those kind of things. And we've grown up with it happening, often because of their own emotional injuries, but we've grown up with these expectations that are all unloving, and we need to give them up. Yep.
Yeah. And also if we've grown up in an environment that has a lot of prejudice within it, we can take that on as truth. It's an error that we believe is truth. So men are better than women, black people are worse than white people. They're all error-based beliefs that create addictions that we have to release. And the pain is it's like the 3-year-old who realises they can't have the lolly. They're experiencing that pain right then. So right here and now when I realise, women aren't better than men, that hurts. Now I've got to feel like, we're equals or whatever, so I have to feel that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Does that make sense
clear?
to everyone? So a lot of times what you really feel is that actually, like I could, in the scenario I was giving you earlier, I could be feeling, actually, I expect that a woman puts dinner on my table, under any circumstance, actually. Like that finishes up being what I'm feeling. Actually, it's a demand. I demand that you put, you're a woman, that's your job. How many of you women feel bad about that one? Quite a few. So it's your job. You've got to do that. That's what I feel. Now, how would that addiction have been created? Well, you know how it got created? By mum putting dinner on my table every single day and every single night up until I was 18 years of age when I left home. And I'm a male. I never saw dad do it, and I never had to do it for myself. So how do I give up that addiction? By firstly feeling the anger of the addiction itself, like there's a lot of rage and expectation in it, and then going in and realising it actually, I'm the one out of line here. I'm the one with the unloving expectation and addiction. And what do I feel about that? Like, right in this instant, I feel you're unloving to me. You don't put dinner on my table, you're unloving to me. That's how it is, right now. That's what I feel. And I may be completely wrong. But I need to feel that. I need to really feel that and connect with that emotionally.
And the reason I bring that up is because I feel that's the pain that people resist the most. It's because in the interaction you have to go and cry about you, because what has happened is there has been an error about love that has entered you when you're young, and you do have to go and cry about feeling like I'm not being loved, even though the truth is you could very well be being loved in that interaction. Yeah.
So when a child doesn't get its lolly, and you've taught the child that every time you go shopping, you're going to go past the lolly aisle and you'll pick a lolly out for it. And then this time the child doesn't get the lolly. What does the child do? Goes, and then it comes up and looks to see whether anyone's noticing. and then if no one's noticing, it goes back down and does a bit more generally, right? And that's what we often do. That's often our rage. Our rage is often this place where we will be in this place where we're really trying to force the other person into what we believe they should do, even though it's totally unloving and it's an addiction. And so what Mary's brought up is very important in this process. Like, to be completely truthful about how you feel means I feel like, actually, come to think of it, you're a woman and you should be making my dinner.
And that's hard to face sometimes, those kinds of truths I've found for me.
Yeah, and then I need to go into, all right, the truth is that a woman doesn't have to make my dinner. Actually, the truth is actually that no one has to make my dinner. Like, no one but myself, in fact, is responsible for my dinner. And the trouble is that I've had a mum who for 18 years has taught me that a woman is responsible for my dinner. Right? So by the way, you mothers out there who've got younger men, boys and girls, stop making them dinner. Teach them how to make their own dinner. Like, you're teaching them some stuff that's going to... They're going to become very obnoxious when they get with their woman or their whoever they're going to finish up with, thinking that the woman should expect to have to make dinner for the rest of her life, don't you think? How many of you ladies have made dinner so much that you're now sick to death of even looking at making dinner? Yeah, quite totally sick to death of it, right? You'd rather not make a meal for the next 20 years and somebody else have to do it, right? And that this emotion in you came from an expectation of your childhood and an expectation about love, and that emotion in you has also created an expectation in the people around you to make dinner for them. So, these are all emotions that need to be addressed. So in that particular issue, if we completely feel how we feel, you'll be surprised sometimes where it goes. Like Mary said, it may go into this place where you actually realise that actually your expectations are actually so totally unloving and off the ball, and you've got to do something about them. Or it may take you into this real childlike place of what's happening. Or it may take you into this real tantrumy place that you need to work your way through to get into the childlike place. Or it may take you into this place where you realise actually that it's got nothing to do with the dinner and got everything to do with your life, your whole life, and how hard it feels. And you might go into that place. Yeah? And either way, you will need to make some choices and decisions to change your life, obviously. Yeah. And what is the time, by the way? 25 past 1. Okay. If we can go up to Deanne.
It was just a question about, Mary, when you were talking about letting it go in the here and now, is a lot of that letting go like the shame and the remorse of the erroneous belief that's come in as well?
Yeah, first, sometimes I have to work through that to get to actually grieving that I'm not... It just feels like to me, I can't expect this anymore, and that feels really... I'm unhappy about that. Like, I'm trying to think of one that happened with AJ. I wanted him to protect me. And then I realised that's totally out of harmony with love. And so I had some shame about the fact that I've been demanding that he protect me all of the time. But then I had to grieve the fact that no one but me is going to protect, God, but I had to feel like I can't expect a man to protect me anymore. That feels really unsafe. I feel really sad about that. So it was really just releasing the expectation. That's what it was for me.
But then again, underneath that, Mary found that there was a lot of emotions about safety from our past and so forth that eventually she connected to. Does that make sense? So safety. So whenever I start talking the truth to a group of people who are angry, what would happen is Mary would get upset with me. Does that make sense? Because she could feel the anger of the audience, she straight away feels unsafe, and then she feels like I'm putting us in an unsafe place, and then because my role is to protect her, then I've got to get out of this unsafe place. Now, unfortunately, what I do is I just keep talking generally, and so her addiction isn't met, and so she gets upset about it and angry about that. Does that make sense? And then she had to just feel that in that moment.
Can I say, though, that I don't think I'm through that causal emotion about our safety, but I feel I have given up that addiction.
Yes.
So
that's one thing to bear in mind too, is that every addiction you give up, you'll find the anger that goes along with it dissipates. That's the beauty. You may not get to the causal emotion sometimes with these addictions, but from that point on, you will no longer have anger when your addiction isn't met. Does that make sense? So many of us have instant anger when our addiction doesn't get met. Instant hurt, instant resentment, all of those instant feelings that come up, where we fire up. And those feelings are all about our addictions getting met. When you deal with the addiction and feel through it emotionally, you'll get to the point where you still may have an underlying causal emotion you need to release, but the actual addiction itself won't drive the angry. There's no addiction anymore, so therefore no angry response. Remember, the addiction is there to mask the causal emotion. That's the purpose of it. So when I'm prepared to acknowledge the addiction, feel it, now it's not masking the causal emotion. So now the causal emotion has a chance to actually come up and be felt. Does that make sense? You wanted to say, Mary? Same thing, was it?
Yeah, just the same thing, that now that emotion is far more present for me all of the time.
Yes.
The safety thing.
So,
Yeah,
so now what happens is, if I talk to a group of people who are angry, Mary, instead of being angry with me, is actually crying because these people are angry and she feels terrible about it. Does that make sense? She's now in the causal emotion because the actual addictive behaviour to get out of the causal emotion is no longer present.
So the anger can subside as soon as you identify the addiction?
No, you have to feel your way through the addiction and the anger will subside. It's very rare for you to notice it intellectually and the anger subsides. You'll find that the anger will keep coming up until you feel the reason why the addiction was created. I'm not getting what I want here. I'm not, when you feel your way through that and release that and cry about that, then the addiction is gone and it's like the addiction disappears. It's like it just goes into nothing. And from that moment on, now the causal emotion is there, ready to be felt at any time it's triggered, and you won't have an addictive response to it. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, thank you.
And that's the beauty of doing it too, is that you actually get out of anger. You have anger very little, or after you deal with this, like addictions, you'll find you'll have very little anger in any of your processing. So if there's still anger in your processing, you know there's a lot of addictions in place still. When you get to the place where you've dealt with a lot of the addictions, the anger itself often is completely gone out of all of your processing. So now, even though Mary still has the emotion where she's afraid for our lives at times, with different interactions that are happening with us and different things that happen and people tell us, and different feelings that people project at us, and she's still afraid of that, she's now not angry with me or with the people doing it anymore.
So could there still be some childhood anger present though?
Oh, certainly there can be.
Yeah,
but
the adult
that's
anger.
why I said rare rather than non-existent. But it should be anger in your work, in your processing work. You need to get to a point where your anger is not even there in a real way. Not that you're intellectually getting out of your anger all the time, but in a real way the anger isn't even present with you anymore. If your anger is present, you know that you're in an addiction still, right? You're in an addiction still when that anger is there. And anger is a beautiful way. And remember I gave a talk about anger being your guide? Anger being your guide, yeah. And your anger is a beautiful guide into what your demands and expectations that are unloving are all about. Your anger is all about that. So if you can allow yourself to feel your anger and be truthful about your anger and be truthful about how it's going on, what's going on inside of you about it, be truthful about hurt, because all hurt-based emotions are angry in nature and they're all projections on others. And if you allow yourself to be truthful about them, you'll very rapidly see your own addictions. And when you see your own addictions, then you have a chance of releasing them emotionally. When you release them emotionally, the underlying causal emotion, which is sitting there underneath this addiction, now can just naturally percolate up into your awareness and you'll feel it, and it will just naturally come up because there are no longer any blockage. There's no longer any passive blockage or active blockage that you have preventing it from coming to the surface. Addictions are an active blockage to your causal emotion. They are a blockage that we created because we badly want to not feel the causal emotion. So we are totally in activity with our addictions. We want these addictions to be met so that we can avoid the causal emotion. Now, when you get rid of the addiction, there's now no longer the desire to avoid your causal emotion either. In that moment, whatever gets triggered just comes up, gets triggered, comes up again, and it gets triggered, comes up again until it's no longer there. And there's nothing to prevent it from coming up anymore. Like, it's the addiction that suppresses it, keeps it down and under control. Yep. Express.
AJ, do we all have to show anger? Is it? I mean, it's a lot about anger.
Well,
And
frustration, annoyance. You know,
Okay.
when I talk about anger, remember, I'm always talking about frustration, mild annoyance, mild frustration, all the way down to there. And even a feeling of hurt, where you're feeling hurt, it usually indicates there's an addiction in play. Right?
Okay.
So if you can allow yourself to see that. So it's not always like this boiling rage. Right? And a lot of times it's just this, oh, I'm a bit annoyed there. And off we go. And because we're only a bit annoyed, we sort of bypass the whole system, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But it's but it's beautiful if we can just tune into that mild annoyance. Because when I've done some tune into my own mild annoyance, I've been absolutely amazed sometimes of what I've found. Like a mild annoyance with some things has turned into this big 3-day process of releasing huge amounts of crap about something. And also huge amounts of stuff about where I'm unwilling to act. So I've had a lot of things come up where I've been annoyed with something happening over here, and then I say, yes. This is all about my own refusal to act in harmony with truth and love. And when I do that, that event wouldn't have even happened. You know, so a lot of times I've seen linkages to all sorts of things go by having a look at these addictions that I've had. And if you can allow yourself to be completely truthful in the moment, like no matter how dark it seems, you know, I feel like getting a gun and shooting a lot of you, like, you know, that feeling, if that feeling is there, voice the feeling and allow yourself not to project it at the people, not to take a gun and shoot the people, but to actually feel the feeling of that, the rage of that even. Allow yourself to feel it. Because for the majority of us, we are not even in tune with any anger that's within us.